Warhammer 40,000 The Horus Heresy. Eidolon The Auric Hammer by Mark Collins. Act 1. Mind. Chapter 1. Sons of the Phoenix. In the days before their illumination, it had been taken as a certainty by the warriors who waged the Great Crusade that ships could not be haunted by spirits, not truly. The Mechanicum preached of it, of course, and void sailors kept their own atrophied superstitions, but to the warriors elect of the Legionis Astartes, the peerless brotherhood of the Third Legion, such things were laughable myths from a bygone era. Now, through the corridors of the wage of sin, madness stalked. The transit from Ullanor had not been easy or without incident. The ships of the fleet had grown insular and febrile, their hulls rippling like tormented flesh. Suicides, already common amongst the mortal herd, had become endemic. The warriors of the Third, beyond such mortal weaknesses, were restless and distant, haunted by whatever force moved through the great vessel like a predator king, determined to find and seize its heart. Haunted. The thought itself seemed anathema. Yet there were ghosts in the machines, knifing through the ether-streaked void, to prey upon the ships of the flotilla. The impossible and the unthinkable had become all too common. Time of their naivety in the face of the galaxy's true nature was long behind them. It had changed around them, almost without them being aware of it. Time, Lord Commander Primus Idolon reflected, had changed so many things. He was not the same being who had set out upon the Great Crusade's vulgar path of conquest. Though he had passed through the trials to make him a child of the Legion, a true son of the Phoenix. It was the years of the new war that had altered him in the most fundamental of ways. Idolon had been beautiful once, sharing in the genetic splendor passed down from his Primarch. It was a supreme irony, then, that Fulgrim himself had robbed him of it. The scars across Eidolon's throat had healed badly, a wound inflicted as much upon his soul as on his flesh. Even as his neck pulsed with the sonic alterations conferred by the chief apothecary, the scar remained resolutely unbending. It flexed and constricted with every fitful motion, restricting the Lord Commander's full range of motion. His skin was bloodlessly pale, his eyes now cataract and rheumy. His hair fell down one side of his head, lank and wilted like a dead plant growth. Yes, he had been beautiful, once. But that had been long ago, and taken at a demigod's whim. Fitting, is it not? Jealousy was always one of your many flaws, father. Idolon bit away the thought. It was unbecoming, both of him and of Fulgrim. The demonic presence of the Primarch Ascendant, the Phoenix in his apotheosis, lingered amidst the corridors of his ship. In the aftermath of Ullanar's bleak council, it would not do to tempt Fulgrim's attention. Not when there were other matters clawing at Eidolon's mind. Stalked and tormented as he was, haunted, he thought again. Something cooed and whispered at his ear, and he leant his head back, drumming it against the command throne as though pain could dismiss the threat. It lolled this way and that with every pulse of his throat, like a child's marionette. Overbalanced and caricatured, whatever drifted about him, coiling and writhing just beneath reality's skin, was close enough to touch him. He was braced to feel claws tease at his skin in lines of fire, with fangs to close around his throat. After so long being hunted, perhaps the culmination would be nothing short of a delight. Idolon yearned to savor the experience. Around him, the command bridge of the Wage of Sin rose in tarnished splendor. Like its master, it had once been a beautiful thing. Now it was exalted, transformed by the Third Legion's unleashed appetites. Banners of human skin fluttered from its iron ribs. Banners of human skin fluttered from the iron ribs of its ceiling. The mirrors glimmered in broken majesty from the corners of the room, casting forth reflections that should not exist. Images which moved too slowly or too quickly, or watched their subjects when they were not looking. Sometimes Idolon would catch a shattered image's eye as it leered and laughed at him with his own face. an incarnate mockery. Idolon could have sworn he'd heard derision drifting about him, as the shattered reflection judged and assessed him. He shook himself, banished the memory, and rolled his shoulders. Status report, he rumbled, rising from his command throne. Harvested bone glimmering wetly along its edges, shimmering with an internal light that caught the lines of Eidolon's corroded, ruined armor. His hand contracted again, reaching across the arm of his command throne, stroking the haft of the thunderhammer that reclined there. Glory Aeterna was a weapon of consummate craft, one he had wielded with skill and devotion ever since the Primarch had graced him with it. He turned from it and spoke to the empty chair. "Now we know our purpose," he breathed. "At last the galaxy will understand, as we have been made to." He blinked, milky eyes darting with the sudden need for stimulus. "Status report," he called again. He was not so sure whether he had slipped so deeply into his reverie that he missed the report, or whether those creatures still at their posts had simply ignored him, lost to their own mania. Either way, it was an inexcusable lapse for someone of his position. "Fleet disposition holds, esteemed lord," crooned what passed for the vessel's master of all specs. The androgynous thing had no eyes, only sutured sockets where they had once rested. A web of cables were wired and screwed into his back, forcing sensor data into its nervous system in an unceasing wave of cognitive feedback and neural overload. The creature mewled and writhed, caught in the ecstasy of complete surrender to excess and duty. Somewhere behind the chorus of muted pleasure, Idolon could hear someone sniggering. Responses from the Sublime Blade and Broken Monarch, the Dwell Eternal and his Beauty Manifest. The auxiliary transport ships are in transit as well. The disposition of the third millennial holds true, my lord. The third millennial, he smiled. That was the command he had taken for his own on the road to terror. Mere rabble, soon to stand as gods on the throne world's burning skin. Such a ripe harvest. They could be so much more. We could. Excellent, Eidolon said, forcing himself to ignore the sound of mockery, and reaching out to stroke the inlaid jewels along one osseous arm of his throne. The gems winking in the garish lights. Ruby and emerald, amber and sapphire. Systems purred in response to his manipulations, seeking communion with the other vessels of the war flotilla. Even through the warp's tides, signal arrays reached out across the immaterial madness, between his vessel and those of his peers, dancing between the ships bound for the Sol system. One by one the warriors of the Third began to manifest, delicate patterns of hololithic light riven through the contradictory static of the warp's malign tide. "Ah, Eidolon," the image of Julius Caesron hissed with curdled mirth. "The closer we draw to the throne world, the more insufferable you become." It shuddered with laughter, and the warped visage of the first captain loomed forward. "Still playing at lordship, the Phoenician has returned to us, and the Legion has gathered. What do you gain by trying to rest your hand at the tiller? Someone has to make sure you don't plunge your vessels into the star on a whim, Julius." Eidolon gurgled back. "Let us not forget that I outrank you. Hurting you and yours falls to me because I have earned my place. I've been trusted by our errant father." He paused, hunching forward so he was eye to eye with the rendition of the favoured son. "Who was the first to join him at Ulanor?" He scoffed. "You were quick to come to heel, true enough. Others had sought him while you dallied elsewhere, hunting the scars and futility, wasn't it? Before you bowed and scraped for Mortarion." Caesron tittered, and the image shook, light twisting around his ruined features. "With such diverse interests, it's a wonder you ever came this far. I imagined that you and the forces you commanded would have idled, waiting, lost to your own desires rather than the masters we serve, our new gods, the Primarch and the War Master. It is only fair that you see your own flaws and failings reflected in me, Julius," Eidolon said. He shook his head and his lank hair fluttered gently, all luster robbed by his rebirth. "I have been fighting the War Master's battles. I sought to cage our enemies and break them. I remember what it means to serve a cause. Always on your own terms. There can be no other terms but mine." Idolon gestured, not to the hololith, but past it. 3 kneeling figures moved in a single motion at his encouragement, rising to their feet and regarding their master with a mixture of emotions. Envy warred with respect, fear was choked down by the pretense of pride, bled from them in a potent mix, mirrored in every movement they made, in their stances, in the subtle purring of their armour. Captain Malacris wore his ruination like a cloak of glory. He had scoured his armour clean of the purple and gold of the Emperor's children, and replaced it with a wild array of colours. Some of the shades that glistened upon his plate had no human name, having been culled from the warp itself. He had anointed himself with the blood of demons, taken in combat, or given willingly in esoteric pacts and unholy oaths. Still, he seemed to glow with the Immaterium's fickle light. Tiny rows of needle teeth had begun to push themselves from the edges of his pauldrons, undoubtedly terminating as bony barbs within the armour itself, to scrape and cut at Malacris's flesh with every movement. His gauntlets were a set of matched lightning claws, once artfully rendered, now hooked like talons of some exaggerated raptor. His helmet, long since brazenly fashioned into the screaming rictus of a bird of prey, was mag-locked at the hip, revealing his remade face. The once rakish features of the warriors had been twisted like melting wax. Jeweled studs were driven bone-deep into his skull, and rings adorned the folds and flaps of warped and distended skin. In places along the scalp, it seemed that Malacris had intentionally flayed his skin and muscle away, and ivory glistened wetly in the harsh lights of the bridge. By contrast, Vociferon maintained the lean, even elegant lines of a blade master of the Third Legion. His armour had come through the early battles of the war with little desecration, save where the wounds had been patched with gold. The filled cracks sprawled like lustrous rivers across the perfect purple of his battleplate. Twin sabres were belted at his hips, their edges finely polished and the metal expertly maintained. They had been forged by Vociferon's own hands, to the fascination and delight of the Legion's tech marines. He wore the helmet, hiding the consummate warrior's sharp features and golden hair. Where Malacris was ruin and flux-given form, Vociferon held firm against the tides of excessive alteration. That he endured amid such a brotherhood, a true paragon of the old Palatine blades, now cast into a pit of warrior cyberites, spoke of his dedication and his self-control. Idolon almost envied him his surety. The last of all was Til Plegua of the Cacophony. The ruined singer was the zenith, the culmination, the singularly everything that Malacris aspired to and Vociferon reviled. His eyes had been pinned open, sutures biting into the flesh of one side of his face and the bone of the other. Til Plegua had, at the whim of the gods, and through the transformative delight of the Maravaglia, cleansed away the meat from the right side of his face, leaving a morbid rictus of grinning bone and perpetually tormented nerve mesh, scrimshawed with strange symbols and intricate scenes of debauchery. His armour was festooned with sonic amplifiers and voximeters, bolted and welded into the distended fabric of the plate. A myriad of insane colours swarm between the mechanisms, so that he seems more a madman's painting come to life than a warrior of the Emperor's children. His throat pulsed and thrummed in mimicry of Eidolon's own sonic gifts. The Lord Commander Primus knew that to hear Til speak was to court madness. Transcendent melodies still swam in his speech, his every utterance little more than a reflection of some vaster and more glorious work. "My champions stand ready for the task," Idolon said simply, gesturing again, down past Caesron's smirking horror. "I have taken the warriors of the Third Millennial as my own, and they have proven themselves to be admirable servants and fine company." He hesitated, forcing a grin onto his twisted features, for the most part. "You never were a great judge of character, were you?" Caesron snorted as he spoke, and the hololith shimmered and sparked again. Between the flickers of projected light, something dwelt. Idolon saw it in fractured moments, caught like an insect in amber, leering back at him with features that gave even him pause. Demon. Thought rippled across his mind. He was no longer listening to Caesron's jibes and vainglorious boasts. There was only the presence which lurked behind him beyond his words. Fangs glistened wetly, set in a face racked by delirious pleasure-pain. For a fleeting moment, Idolon thought he saw an echo of the Phoenician in the thing's mania, but it was gone a second later. It held no true form. the liminal stuff of its being flowed before writhing in limitless mockery. Brother. The voice whispered into Eidolon's skull. Pain throbbed dully through his cranium, and he leant back, letting the flesh catch on the bone spurs of his throne. Thudded his skull against the metal and breathed out. Kindred. The thing whispered again, its every word dancing with revelation and promise. Idolon knew that if he lowered his guard but a little, then the presence would find purchase, slither in, and hollow him out. Demons were nothing but dust and dreams, poisoned promises. Brother? Caesron's voice had returned now. The first captain spared Eidolon a withering look before he chuckled bleakly. You do not look well, Lord Commander Primus. Perhaps you should let your tame physicians tend to your maladies, eh? The image shuddered once more, and Caesron looked away, turning his maddened gaze to the side and nodding. When next we speak, it shall be as we return home, guided by our father's hand. Then the feast can begin in earnest. I hope to see you upon the field, Lord Commander. It would be truly exquisite to fight with you once again. Idolon merely nodded, teeth gritted, as I'm sure it would be to fight at your side, favoured son. He forced his grimace to become a grin. Terror shall be the crucible, and the culmination. There we shall be as we were always intended to be. Eidolon's mind rolled with the potential of what was to come. Terror itself, the throne world laid bare and yearning for their attentions. A populace to be made sport of, and old rivals to be cast down. After Terror there would be time to build, for Vabius to experiment, for the Legion to truly blossom, and for his own ascent to become complete. He was the Lord Commander Primus. There would be a place for him in the new Imperium. Yet first, that final barricade had to be surmounted. The palace had to be claimed and made ready. Just as the thrones of the gods waited beyond the veil. Soon all other enmities will be set aside. Caesron intoned. The hololith flickered again, and the ship shuddered as though in baleful sympathy. The time comes when you must at last join us. The demon breathed in place of the first captain. It looked at Idolon with milky eyes, cataract, and yet bright with immaterial fire. In that perfect moment, suspended before the dying image of Julius Caesron, it raised one clawed hand as though conducting a symphony, toying with the air to the tune of music only it could hear. Then the ship was shaking and screaming, and all reduced to the fire and the laughter of those who dwelt beyond. That was a very interesting, that was a nice introduction, I thought. We got to meet some of the new characters. Not sure how I feel about the writing. I think it's good. It feels good. There's less tongue twisters in this than Lords of Excess. This is only the second Emperor's Children book I've read. My first entry into the Horus Heresy series, so I don't really know what to expect. I'm not holding any expectations. But it was nice. I really like the descriptions of the characters. I like the different champions Idolon has. I wonder if they're meant to be aspects of him, like a past, present, and future. I love how they all contrast with each other. And I hope that we get to explore their personalities. I hope we get to see each of them. I think I'm going to enjoy this. The chapters are quite short, but it's not a very long book from the looks of it. It's 20 chapters, but the chapters all seem relatively short. It's about 200 pages long. So it should be a nice little read. If we find some very short chapters, I might do a couple of videos a day. But I'm going to try and get these out every single day. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, do all the social media stuff. It helps people see this. It helps me keep going. I really hope that you'll join me for this little journey. I hope it's going to be a good time. It seems nice so far. Anyway, I hope you have a great day. I'll see you next time. Mwah.